Hi everyone, my name is Angela Campos and I'm the daughter of Charlotte Boyden. I'm 24 years old and at the age of 8 I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. When I was 8, I was staying at my best friend Courtney's house and I was staying there for the weekend and it was going great, but on the second day that I was there I got really violently ill and it didn't pass, it kept going. So my mother came and got me. We went home and for like 3 to 4 days later I was still throwing up, super sick. So we ended up going to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, the doctors checked my blood. It was too high to read. My ketones were too large to read. They were off the scales. And the doctor came to break the news to my mother that I was diabetic. All I remember during that time was my mother bouncing around from wall to wall in the hospital room, crying and just asking why. And there's me sitting there and I have no idea what's going on. I didn't understand what was wrong with me. The only information that I was given as a child at that time was the doctors told me I could not have any more sugar, I could not have any more complex carbs. Basically, I could have nothing that tasted good. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't exercise and be very active during that time. I had to just live a completely different life. Basically took all the fun out of my life at that time. And that was the only education I got as a child during that time. Now, after I came home from the hospital with my mother, that week was Halloween. So we had our Halloween costumes bought already. We all went trick-or-treating. My brothers and sisters got to go house to house trick-or-treating, for all the treats and candy and everything. I had to stand there by my mother. I couldn't partake in any of the fun activities at that time. And simply because we didn't have the knowledge that I could or that I would be able to. So that entire event just made me angry. I was mad at the world, at why I was different and why I couldn't be like all the other kids. Going to school in elementary school and middle school with diabetes was extremely difficult for me. I was the only diabetic in the school and no one was educated on how diabetes worked with a child and what to do. During that time I felt alone, I was extremely angry, I felt like no one understood what I was going through. And the kids, because we weren't educated on what to tell the kids about me, all they did was make fun, they gave me a hard time, they bullied me. Just a horrible situation for a child to grow up in. So the main reason is they were jealous that I had to eat at certain times. So I had snacks during class. I'd get made fun of for it, for something as silly as just trying to take care of myself. So kids made fun of me, they laughed at me. Basically no one knew what to do with me because no one understood. So at that point in my life, I told myself that everyone was wrong. The doctors were wrong, they didn't know what they were talking about. And I could do whatever I set my mind to, which at that time was eating whatever I wanted, not taking my insulin, and just proving everyone I'm not diabetic. I started sneaking food, I started sneaking candy, anything I could get my hands on that I knew I wasn't supposed to eat but I wanted, I went ahead and did it. So at this point I started skipping shots with not eating correctly anymore. Basically, this was the only part of my life I felt I had control over anymore. I felt when I was diagnosed that everything was taken away from me and I had no control over my life, but this I did. I could choose when to eat, I could choose what to eat, and I could choose if I'm going to take a shot or not. But because I made those decisions, I started going into DKA. So when a diabetic goes into ketone acidosis, there's a few things that we are told what goes on. Extreme thirst, tired, anxious, angry, sleepy, gotta pee a lot, or sweaty. And their blood sugar is off the charts or their ketones are off the charts. But I want to go deeper into this. What non-diabetics and doctors and nurses and what everyone doesn't understand is those symptoms go a lot deeper than just thirsty. For example, for me going into DKA, I do get thirsty, but it's an extreme thirst. If you can imagine having every ounce of water taken out of your mouth completely to where it's not cotton mouth or dry throat or anything like that, but there's no liquid at all. Like you're in a desert. I have been in times of DKA where my tongue has stuck to the top of my mouth and I've had to rip it off to where a layer of skin comes off because there's no water at all. There's no moisture at all. My lips will crack and bleed. There's nothing there. So when I go into the hospital and I'm telling them I'm thirsty, I can't stand it, I need water, and they're like, well, we know, but you can't have any. You don't understand the psychological effects that has on a child, because you're basically telling them they have to sit in that. I'm 9 years old in DKA, and it's been like being in the desert for days on end with no water. And at this point, now I'm looking at a nurse in her eyes and she's telling me, no, I can't give you an ice cube. And that's all I want more than anything in the world. And that's what I can't get. And she doesn't understand I would kill to get that at this point. That's all I can think about. That's all I want. And I'm being told no. So I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling pissed off. I'm feeling like I don't understand why. She doesn't understand me. But then I'm also getting that she doesn't care to understand. So it's really hard to explain everything that goes on during this point when you're going through DKA and you're so thirsty and all you can think about is getting water. Even though you know if you do drink water and drink any kind of liquids, you're going to be violently ill within 30 minutes and throwing up constantly. You're willing to go through that to quench this thirst. That's how bad it is. You're willing to go through that pain just to satisfy this problem at this point. And then the pain aspect of the entire process of DKA, if it lasts a day, if it lasts a week, a month, the pain that a diabetic goes through, I don't think anyone can comprehend or explain, because not only with just the thirst issue that we go through, the psychological pains there, but it's physically painful. There's a gut-wrenching pain that goes through your stomach because you're not hungry. You want something, like mainly liquids. You want to feel that emptiness in you with liquids, even though every time you put even an ice cube in your mouth, you're going to start violently throwing up. It's extremely painful to sit there and go through that. I've had to sit on hospital beds in the fetal position and just scream and cry because there's nothing to be done for that. A diabetic has to go through that when there's no pain meds that's going to help. There's nothing that's going to help but getting that blood sugar down. But that isn't a fast process. So that can last from an hour to days. The whole body aches, and I can't even explain how bad it aches. You can't walk. You lose motor skills. I've had to be carried, to the car, carried to the hospital almost every time in DKA. You're completely helpless. But it's mainly because if you try to move, the pain that shoots through your body is unlike any pain you've ever experienced in your life. And it's something that you just have to go through. All of the pain, all the physical and mental pain that a diabetic has to go through during this process of DKA is, like I said before, just unimaginable. But it goes to the point where I have laid there countless times in the hospital and been done and checked out and said, yep, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm ready to die because of all of the pain that I've had to go through in just that one day. Having the pain of, the extreme thirst, the hunger, the can't walk, you can't move without shooting pains going through you. You hit a point where that just wears down on you, where you just can't take it anymore. For example, I was 12 years old when I went into DKA, and it was a bad one. I was in ICU for a week. And during this week, The thirst was there, the pain was there, and I had checked out. I had hit the point where I had had enough. So my mother is sitting there beside my bed, and I just looked at her and I said, Mom, I want to go home. And she knew what I meant, and it hurt her even more because she knew she couldn't help me. She couldn't do anything to help me through that point in my life. That's what not only children but teenagers in DKA go through. They hit that point not once in their life but multiple points throughout their life in DKA where everything is too much. They can't go on. They can't continue. They don't want to even think about another day going through this pain. And cry. So after telling my mother this, to see her sit there and just cry, she couldn't say anything to me because she didn't know what to say. There's nothing she could do to help me. But the only way I felt better at that point was to know that I could die and leave all of that pain behind. The thought of that was what made me feel better, was that it was going to be over soon. I hated looking on my mother and feeling like a burden to her life. And seeing her go through not only one episode, but multiple episodes with high blood sugars, DKA, low blood sugars, and seeing that much pain on my mom's face is worse than anything. Just to feel not only like I was alone through all of this, but to also know that she was there, but she couldn't help me. And that brought a lot of pain to her, and that hurt more than anything as well. So as a teenager, now I am extremely rebellious. To this point in my time, I'm doing whatever the heck I want. Because I'm still on a mission to prove the doctors wrong, and it's been going great so far. And I'm mad, I'm angry, still confused, still feel like no one understands me nor wants to. So at this point in my life, diabetic education has changed dramatically. Going from I can't eat anything, I can't eat sugar or complex carbs, can't stay up late, nothing like that, to now I can do whatever I want and I can live just like a non-diabetic lives. All I have to do is take a shot for it. So now hearing this, it excites me because that's almost what I've been doing my whole life. But it also made me realize too that I really believe the doctors didn't know what the heck they were doing. So my mother told me that during her nursing program, she learned that diabetics as teenagers are difficult. Now, obviously I didn't take the course, so I don't know in what context that meant, but I wanted to explain exactly why diabetics who are teenagers can be difficult. Think back when you were a teenager. You were difficult too. You were rebellious, you didn't want to be told what to do. So imagine going through all of those problems as a teenager and all of those moods that you had back then. Now imagine adding on the burden of being told what you can eat, when you can eat, counting carbs, taking insulin, checking your blood, peeing on a stick, all of these different things. You would be difficult too. And then just imagine growing up in a place where you know that people have made you feel like an inconvenience. Not only certain family members, but also the teachers. In middle and high school, the teachers just felt like I was a complete inconvenience to them because I had to leave in the middle of their lesson to go to the nurse to eat a snack or to check my blood. I had to bring snacks into the class, which caused disruption to them. Getting sick, having to leave early, or showing up late because you were sick that day from a high or a low. You know, the main thing was they just didn't understand. So naturally, I hated everyone. So I was extremely difficult as a teenager. I don't see where you wouldn't be either. So as a child, the only thing I felt like I could control was to sneak candy and to not take insulin. But now as a teenager, not only is that something I could control, but I took control over it. And I used it as a way to further my rebellion, to prove to everyone, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want and no one's going to stop me. So as a teenager getting DKA, I didn't want to go to the hospital anymore. I had hit that point where I'm done. I'm going to rebel. I'm going to do whatever I want. So instead of telling my mother that I was sick and I had high blood sugar and ketones were super high, instead of telling her these things, I would just go into my room, and that was another form of me taking control and rebelling. I would go into my room and take excessive amounts of insulin, sometimes 30 and 40 units, just to get the end result that I wanted all along, and that was to die. My thinking at that point was dying with a low blood sugar was a hell of a lot better than going to the hospital and going through the people not understanding me and going through a week long of pain with DKA. Dying in my room with a low blood sugar was a way better option to me. Well, obviously I didn't die. I'm still here. Now, I know I'm not the only diabetic that has gone through this in life. And now that I'm an adult and I'm obviously more mature and more knowledgeable about my disease and how it works and why, I understand why I had so many problems as a child and a teenager in understanding what I was going through and what was going on. Now, if nurses and doctors had more knowledge about exactly what it is that diabetics go through as children, as teenagers, as adults, through highs, DKA, or lows, if they actually understood and knew what it was we went through, I think it would help everybody in future patients that they'd have. They'd be able to be more compassionate and more caring to their patients because they now understand. If the nurses that I encountered as a child and teenager in all of those hospitals would have taken the time to get to know exactly what was going on underneath the surface, I believe that they would have been a lot more caring and compassionate instead of just thinking that I was being a difficult child or a rebellious teenager. Then they could see that I wasn't just a patient, that I was a human being. Now, I truly do believe this video will go on to help nurses who are going to be working in different hospitals, ICU programs, who are going to come across diabetic children and teenagers and adults who are going to be going through DKA. And hopefully this just gives you guys a little insight and further knowledge into what we have gone through in our life. That way, hopefully it helps someone. And I'm really honored to share a piece of my life with all of you guys. Thank you so much, and I really hope this sheds some light on how DKA affects a person's whole life, mentally and physically. And by the way, to my mother, Charlotte Boyden, I am so proud of you for going through this journey as becoming a nurse. You are the best person I've ever known in my whole life, and you're going to go on to help so many people out there. I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you.